All right, another spark and another build. Let the tradecraft begin. We've covered the great Titan sagas, the glory of the Forge Accord. But today, we're going somewhere darker. We are shifting into the shattered mirror realm of the Tools and Titans TCG.
Today we talk about the Rustborn Titans, and we're starting with the most infamous of them all, the Rustborn Trinity. These aren't just corrupted titans. They are the origin point of all rust, the very first sparks of decay, and the embodiment of absolute betrayal. But before that, let's review the basics of playing Tools and Titans.
So how do you play Tools and Titans?
It unfolds in 6 phases. First, draw your cards to see your options and find your path to victory.
Second, charge your energy. You need weave to power your tools, your structures, and your titans.
Third, build your field. This is where you play your structures and tool cards, setting up your workshop for the turn.
Fourth, act with your powers, use abilities, complete tasks, and play powerful flux cards to change the game.
Fifth, clash with your titans. The moment of impact, you declare your attacks on enemy titans or structures.
And finally, step 6, end your turn. A moment to reset, passing the flow of battle to your opponent.
6 steps. Simple to learn, a lifetime to master. Now let's get started.
Of course, the Rustborn Trinity. The first fallen. That sounds heavy. So who exactly makes up this trinity of terror?
The Rustborn Trinity consists of 3 figures, each a fallen star from the Forge Accord. First, there is Shivvolt, who was once the noble Voltara.
Voltara, the master electrician. She was the one who designed the Weave Heart Pulse, the very thing that powers most of the guilds. She was a symbol of stability and shared power.
The very same. Then you have Fusure, the corrupted form of the brilliant artisan, Fusio, the master welder. And finally, there's Rustara, the shadow of the once unbreakable Lokara, the master locksmith.
Legends. All 3 of them. Their work with energy, fusion, and sealing logic basically built the foundations of the modern weave. So what happened? How could they fall so far?
That's the core of the tragedy. They didn't start as monsters. They were twisted by their own virtues. Through hubris, obsession, and ultimately betrayal, they fell into a darkness from which they would never return. They became the first Rustborn, a pantheon dedicated to entropy, sabotage, and psychological warfare.
So they're not just villains. They're symbols.
They are cautionary tales written into the game's code. They symbolize what happens when mastery curdles into corruption. They are the architects of Rust, the scorchers of the Accord, and the fathers and mother of Decay itself.
That goes way beyond just being the bad guys. What do they represent mechanically and thematically in the game?
Thematically, they represent the primal forms of Rustborn entropy. Shivvolt embodies sabotage through energy vampirism. Fusure is the avatar of meltdown, creation turned cancerous. And Rustara is betrayal made manifest, the weaponization of trust.
So it's not just about physical decay on the cards?
Not at all. It's about the collapse of core philosophies. The game shows this through identity reversal and energy inversion. It's the loss of control over the very tools and laws these titans once embodied. Their fall is permanent. Unlike the purified Echo Titans we've discussed, the Trinity is irreversible. Their redemption is not possible.
Their choices became their new doctrines.
Doctrines of pure destruction. Each one is a toxic inversion of their original self. Shivvolt weaponizes life-giving light into a draining, parasitic darkness. Fusure transforms the unity of creation into catastrophic meltdown and instability. And Rustara, she turns protective protocols into paranoia and lockout betrayal.
Let's go back to that moment. The fall. When did this all happen?
It happened during a single cataclysmic event in the early Forge era, an event known as the Threefold Fracture. It was a seismic betrayal that shattered the golden balance of trade and cooperation forever.
What was the Forge Accord like before the fracture?
Imagine an era of unparalleled creation, titans sharing blueprints, guilds cooperating on massive projects. The weave was stable, a resource for all. Voltara, Fusio, and Lokara were the architects of that peace. They were the bedrock.
And then that bedrock cracked.
It was shattered. First, Voltara. In a moment of supreme hubris, he tried to seize control of the entire weave. He overloaded the weave heart pulse, not to destroy it, but to become its sole master. The resulting energy siphon catastrophe didn't give him control. It twisted him into Shivvolt.
He was consumed by the very power he sought to command. What about Fusio?
Fusio was obsessed with creation at any cost. He initiated a forbidden fusion experiment, attempting to forge a new element, but his calculations were reckless. The experiment became unstable, and in the ensuing explosion, he destroyed a neighboring titan, Structus Minor, vaporizing him instantly. That act of destructive creation, it burned away Fusio and left Fusure in his place.
And Lokara, the Trust Keeper. Her fall must have been the most painful.
Hers was the deepest cut. It was pure betrayal. A shadowy faction, the first whispers of the Rustborn, promised her knowledge to protect the Accord. She believed them. She broke her own trust protocols, opening the sealed guild blueprints to these corrupted forces. She thought she was preventing a war. Instead, she armed the enemy. In that ultimate act of betrayal, she became Rustara. These three events, happening in quick succession, marked the birth of the Rustborn faction.
And where do these things dwell now? I can't imagine they have a corner office in the guild hall.
Each member of the Trinity now dwells in a corrupted, nightmarish version of their original sanctum. These places are known as Scorch Havens.
Give me the tour. What are they like?
Shivvolt resides in the Flicker Tomb. Imagine a cathedral of crackling, dying light where shadows stretch and consume energy. It's a place where your charge tokens flicker and die, siphoned away into nothingness. Then there's Fusure's home, the Ember Grave. It's a molten, radioactive wasteland of weeping metal and glowing slag, haunted by the radioactive ghost of his ambition. Any structure built there slowly melts away.
And Rustara? Where does a being of pure betrayal live?
She haunts the Fracture Vault. It's not entirely a physical place. It's a datascape of broken firewalls and screaming corrupted code. Every echo is a lie. Every piece of information is a trap. And worse, these zones actively leak what are called scorch fields, infecting nearby zones and turning them into dangerous PvE battlegrounds.
So their corruption literally bleeds into the game board.
Exactly. A scorch field might cause any non-Rustborn Titan to take 1 damage at the end of a turn, or make flux cards cost 1 more weave to play. Their very presence is poison.
Okay, so they have these terrifying backstories, but why do they matter so much in the game itself? What's their function?
They matter because they are the genesis. They are the origin of the entire Rustborn faction, setting both the narrative and the mechanical templates for all other corruption forms that follow. They introduce game-breaking mechanics.
You mean game mechanics focused on, well, breaking the game for the other player?
Precisely. They introduce Scorch, the Rustborn exclusive card type that deals irreversible damage. It's not like normal damage that can be repaired. A Scorch counter is a permanent wound. Their designs also support entire deck archetypes: Energy Drain, Fusion Meltdown, and Trust Collapse. They are built to destabilize nearly every traditional Titan playstyle.
So if you're playing a PvE campaign, and one of them shows up, it's bad news.
It's catastrophic. Their appearance fundamentally alters win conditions. They might replace entire zones on the map with their Scorch Havens, or trigger something called a Rust Surge, which can cripple your deck. They are living endgames designed to show players what happens when a Titan gives in completely.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about those core systems. Give me an example of a Scorch card.
A classic is a card called Irreversible Rot. It's a 2-cost Flux card that you can only play if you control a Rustborn Titan. You target an opponent's structure. It gets a Scorch counter. From that point on, that structure cannot be repaired and its abilities cannot be activated. It just sits there, taking up space. A monument to decay.
Brutal. What about entropy overdrive? You said it was high risk.
It is. The Trinity gains power, their corruption power, or CP, very quickly. But they are unstable. Imagine you're at 4 CP. You have a card that gives you 3 more, launching you to 7 and triggering a huge ability. But entropy overdrive means if you do that, you also have to discard 2 cards at random, and your opponent gets to draw 1. Is the power now worth the cost and the advantage you give your opponent? It forces you to make hard choices.
And Rust debt sounds just as dangerous.
Even more so, there's a Flux card called Borrowed Power. It's free. It gives you 3 charge tokens now. A huge tempo swing, but it puts a debt counter on your Titan. If you don't remove it by paying 2 weave by your next end phase, your Titan takes 5 damage directly. It's a ticking time bomb you place on yourself.
And Rustara's trust denial loops. Give me a concrete example. How does she turn a deck against its owner?
Imagine your opponent plays a task card. A very common one is Synergistic Assembly, which says, if you control 3 tool cards, draw 2 cards. A great way to reload your hand. But Rustara has an ability called Protocol Inversion. For a cost, she can target that task. Now, the card's text is treated as if it reads, if you control 3 tool cards, your opponent draws 2 cards. She turns your greatest strengths into their biggest advantages. It's the ultimate psychological warfare.
That is just evil. Let's talk strategy. How do you play as them? What's the Shivvolt archetype?
Shivvolt is a drain aggro strategy. You use cards like Weave Leech and Flicker Siphon to steal your opponent's charge tokens or make them useless. You want to keep their weave pool empty so they can't respond. Then you attack fast with low-cost units while they're powerless. Your goal is to win before they can stabilize.
And Fusure? The meltdown cascade.
With Fusure, you're building a doomsday machine. You stack the board with Unstable Fusion Core and Volatile Conduit tool cards. They don't do much on their own. But then you play your key card, Total Meltdown. It triggers a chain reaction, dealing damage to all adjacent zones for each fusion tool you have. It's a combo deck that aims for a massive, board-clearing burst of damage.
And the Rustara denial lock?
That's for players who love control and manipulation. You aren't trying to out-damage your opponent. You're trying to make it impossible for them to play. You use her abilities to break their combos, invert their triggers, and block their key steps. You win when they have a full hand of cards they can no longer use effectively. You win by dismantling their entire strategy piece by piece.
So what are their weaknesses? How do you fight back?
They have significant flaws. That Rust debt mechanic is a major one. If a player is too greedy, they can cause their own downfall. And they have very low flexibility. Their mechanics are so specific that if you disrupt their core plan, they have no plan B. A Shivvolt deck without energy to drain is just a pile of weak units.
And Scorch can backfire?
Absolutely. If you use a powerful Scorch effect that locks down a zone, but your opponent manages to move their key Titan away, you might have just locked yourself out of that part of the board. And in PvP, decks built around Purified Echo or Preservant Titans are their natural predators. Titans like Verdacia, who focuses on cleansing and regrowth, can remove Scorch counters and undo the damage. They are classic glass cannons. They hit incredibly hard, but they are vulnerable to focused counterplay.
So narratively, what is their ultimate function in the game's campaigns?
They are the core antagonists in major story arcs like the Fracture Accord campaign and the Scorch Rain event. They often serve as multi-phase PvE dungeon bosses, where their mechanics evolve as you fight them. In Phase 1, Shivvolt might just drain your energy. In Phase 2, his Flickertomb Scorch Field appears. In Phase 3, he starts using Rust Debt to power devastating attacks.
And they can actually change the rules of the game?
Yes. When fielded in certain campaigns, they act as campaign modifiers. Shivvolt might disable the charge refresh step for both players. Fusure could make all tool cards cost one more weave. Rustara could reverse the turn order under certain conditions, creating utter chaos. They represent the shadow of the Titan legacy.
A warning about what happens when your own ideals are pushed too far, twisted until they break.
Exactly. The fall of Voltara, Fusio, and Lakara wasn't because of some outside monster. It came from within. Voltara's ambition for stability became a lust for control. Fusio's passion for creation became a reckless obsession. Lakara's desire for protection became a fatal, paranoid betrayal. Their virtues became unbalanced and turned into their downfall.
In that story, Tools and Titans becomes more than just a game about building and battling.
It becomes a mirror, a reflection of the world it builds, showing us that the path to decay often starts with the best of intentions. They aren't just threats to be defeated, they are warnings to be understood. And maybe a mirror for us, too.
In every match of Tools and Titans, your tradecraft unfolds in 6 simple moves.
Draw,
Charge,
building,
act,
clash,
end,
simplicity for the novice,
mastery for the Titan.